something that probably should have been happened. Seems like it's coming to fruition sooner than later at this point. And that is Bradley Beal possibly getting traded from the Washington Wizards. Now, I am not one to sit here and say I'm always for a star player getting traded. Like, why would you trade a star player? I've been on record in saying if you have a star player, you keep that star player, and you try everything in your power to build a team, an adequate team around said star player. And people know that I'm a Wizards fan. I'm from the Maryland, D.C., Maryland area. I grew up a Wizards fan. I am a Wizards fan. It's been tough. I think I put a short out about it a couple days ago. It's tough being a Wizards fan, but that is me. But one of the biggest reasons why I said that this probably should have happened a good number of years ago is because sometimes you can see clear as day the ceiling for a player and a team. And a lot of times that ceiling is not a championship caliber ceiling. And there are some times where the ceiling isn't as high as you think, or isn't even as high as playoffs or second round of the playoffs. The Washington Wizards have been in this group, a group that you never want to end up in sports, and that is the middle of the pack. You never want to end up in the middle of the pack because you're too good to have a high draft pick, and we just talked about with Zion Williamson. If you're not that good, you want to try to at least be closer to the number one spot in the draft, so you can possibly have a better shot of getting those generational talents or franchise-changing talents. So Washington has been too good of a team to be a part of that conversation, but they're nowhere close in being in that championship caliber, high round caliber team. Like when we think about the Boston Celtics, who last year made it to the NBA Finals, they lost. This year made it to the conference finals, lost. But you can see their ceiling is at least the NBA Finals. Or another team that their ceiling might not be the NBA Finals, but their ceiling is playoff. Let's go with the Chicago Bulls. Chicago Bulls' ceiling is at least, we don't think they're a championship caliber team, but their ceiling is at least the playoffs. Now, yes, they didn't make the playoffs this year. They made the play-in, but, the playoffs has pretty much been their ceiling. The Toronto Raptors, boom. The Toronto Raptors ceiling, ever since Kawhi Leonard has been left, has pretty much been playoffs or, first, second round of the playoffs. No one thinks they're a championship team, but the Washington Wizards aren't even in that conversation. They might be able to be in the play-in, but they haven't been in that, the Wizards could do this. No. They've just been middle of the pack. You see that the Minnesota Vikings are a middle of the pack team. No. Yeah, the Minnesota Vikings have pretty much been a middle of the pack team. The Mariners, Seattle Mariners, have been a middle of the pack team. What's a hockey team that's middle of the pack? Probably the I mean, at least no. Probably maybe the Capitals now. Middle of the pack. Washington's ceiling has been middle of the pack for a while now. And another thing about ceilings is their ceilings on stars. Like, we know the ceiling for LeBron James is obviously NBA championship. We know the ceiling for Nikola Jokic is obviously NBA championship. We know the ceiling for Kevin Durant is obviously NBA championship. Steph Curry, championship. We know the ceiling for maybe a Jason Tatum could possibly be the championship since he's been there. We know, and even with that ceiling, another way to describe it is there are stars that you can build a championship caliber team around. And then there are stars that are very good, but might not be an A player. And that is where the Washington Wizards and Bradley Beal have found themselves for a couple years now, for a good number of years now. Bradley Beal is a good player. He's a great player. He's a great scorer. He's one of the best mid-range shooters, and his ability to cut and get to the rim he is a great player. But Bradley Beal, in my opinion, is not one of those players that you can build a team around. He is a good second option. He's a great third option. I think if he is a second or third option, your team is possibly a championship caliber team. If he is your first option, you're not. So while the Washington Wizards have tried to build their team around Bradley Beal, they've been trying to build their team around a player that isn't a championship caliber player. And don't get me wrong, I know it sounds crazy, but that's no offense to Bradley Beal. That's just how it is. The Indianapolis Pacers tried to build their team around Paul George, the height of Paul George. And while the height of Paul George before the injury was a really good player, he was not a player that was good enough to build your team around and be a championship caliber team. Hell, he even came out and said that he's not a 1. He might be a 2 or a 3, which I've never really heard someone come out and say that, but hey. So we're at this point now where Bradley Beal, which we should have been a couple years ago, but we're at this point now where Bradley Beal, who got a new contract, who has a no trade clause, and has the ability to pretty much dictate his own trade and who he gets traded to, and the compensation that Washington gets through the dealings of his contract, which is something else you never really heard of. Bradley Beal is more than likely going to get traded sooner than later. And you're hearing a bunch of teams. You're hearing the Bucks. You're hearing the Heat. You're hearing Golden State. You're hearing a lot of teams that could possibly be in the talks of acquiring Bradley Beal's talents. And what's even worse about, or the worst part about this situation, for the Wizards at least, is Bradley Beal is a depreciating asset not because of his talent, but because everyone knows that everyone can see the ceiling that Bradley Beal has on the Wizards. And they know that, okay, the Wizards are trying to trade Bradley Beal, so we're not going to give that much up for him. And Bradley Beal, at the end of the day, has the final say-so. So it's like you're trading a star player, but you're not going to get star value for said player, which you're going to ask for, don't get me wrong, but you're not going to get it because everyone and their mama knows you're trying to trade this player. That's just it. But the question is, where does Bradley Beal fit the most? And we've already explained and we already know that Bradley Beal is not a number one player. However, not a number one player. However, we do know that if Bradley Beal was a 2 or Bradley Beal was a 3, that makes your team exponentially better because it takes a lot of the defensive attention that Bradley Beal would see as a 1. That's not there anymore. He doesn't get that type of attention. So the 3 teams that I can see, and their names, their names have been circulating throughout. So this is no breaking news. I think number 1 would probably be the Miami Heat if they can't get Damian Lillard. I think I went on. Shouts out to Dwayne Marcus. Shouts out to his podcast, the GOAT Talk podcast. I was on his podcast a couple days ago, or maybe 2 or 3 days ago, and he was talking about. We were talking about the NBA Finals, and we were talking about why the Miami Heat essentially lost the NBA Finals. And I said, and it wasn't just me, the panel agreed, but I said that the Miami Heat didn't lose the NBA Finals because of defense. I know if you look at the numbers that Nikola Jokic had or Jamal Murray had, the Miami Heat did not lose the NBA Finals because of defense. They lost because they couldn't buy a 3. There was so many times when they were going through droughts, 2, 3, 4 minute droughts where they couldn't hit a bucket, which of course has been Miami all year, or was Miami all year. So it wasn't. They played really good defense. I know it's crazy when you look at the stats. They played really good defense on the entire Nuggets team. Bam Adebayo was probably the MVP for the Miami Heat in the finals because of how good he was defensively and how good he was offensively. And that's shocking for me to say because I didn't think it was possible. But if they would have hit their shots, I'm not going to say that they would have beat Denver, but there's a possibility they still could be playing. So you add Bradley Beal to this team. Now, yeah, you would probably have to lose Duncan Robinson and Tyler Euro and maybe a draft pick or 2, but you get a high-level scorer. I mean, Bradley Beal, I think 2 years in a row, led the league in scoring. So you get that type of player on your team alongside Jimmy Butler, alongside Bam Adebayo. You have a championship caliber team on a team that just went to the championship. And I think they have they fare a lot better with Bradley Beal than without him. So the number 1 team, again, I think Damian Lillard would be obviously better, but from reports, it looks like Damian Lillard is unavailable. So I think Bradley Beal to Miami would be perfect. I think that would be the number 1 destination for him. Number 2, I would probably go Philly. No, that's a lie. Yeah, I'll go Philly, especially if they lose James Harden, which is more as the days go by, it's looking more and more like James Harden might be out of Philly. If he's not, we'll talk about it, but it looks like you're going to lose James Harden. So you get Bradley Beal alongside, Tyrese Maxey, alongside Joel Embiid, and Joel Embiid just won the MVP. That is a championship caliber team. And this is no shot to him. This is just fact. Unlike James Harden, you might not get the disappearance of Bradley Beal in the playoffs, or the regression that you get from James Harden in the playoffs. You might not get that from Bradley Beal. And it opens up your offense. Now, if I'm Washington, right, there's no way in heaven and hell I'm trading Bradley Beal. For the trade I saw was for Tobias Harris, I think Kuzma's or whatever his name is, and a draft pick. Ain't no way in hell. If I don't get at least Tyrese Maxey, there's no conversation. But that's just me. So I think number 2 would probably be Philly, and number 3 would be I think would probably be the Bucks. Now, this is also I think the Bucks have different, like, you need to prioritize re-signing Brook Lopez, need to try to prioritize re-signing Chris Middleton, and if that means that you lose out on Bradley Beal, then I understand. I mean, even without Bradley Beal, this team won a championship just 2 years ago. So, but with Bradley Beal, I mean, one of the biggest indictments that we have or we see against the Milwaukee Bucks is they struggle mightily in half-court offense because while, yes, they having really good shooters, and I mean, you have Grayson Allen, you have Chris Middleton, you have Brook Lopez, they don't have a player that can really put the ball on the ground and get a solid jump shot outside of maybe Chris Middleton. But Chris Middleton's health has been on the decline as far as he's been hurt multiple times last few years. You add Bradley Beal, where that's his specialty, coming off of pick and roll and making something happen. That would open up so much for Giannis, which is a scary thing to think about. And that'll just open up so much for the entire Bucks team. I mean, now Drew Holiday his scoring is now a luxury outside of a need. Chris Middleton, if you don't have to give him up, that Chris Middleton along with Bradley Beal and Giannis, man, come on. So I think the three teams that would benefit the most from Bradley Beal's services would be the Heat number 1, Philly number 2, and the Bucks number 3. There's multiple teams. Like, if there's a way that I know that the Portland Trailblazers are trying to build through the draft or whatever, but if the Portland Trailblazers can get a Bradley Beal, that'd be crazy. Golden State, I understand that you probably have to give up Jordan Poole and Klay Thompson. I probably wouldn't do that after. I mean, I know we're killing Klay Thompson for what happened in the playoffs, but the majority of if you really look, Klay Thompson had the best regular season he's had in years this year. And actually, he had a pretty good not pretty good, but the first few games of the King series, he was okay. So I know he's not, Klay Thompson's not where he was, of course, before the injury defensively, but I mean, what do you expect? He injured both his ACLs. So, and if you trade him, Klay Thompson, for Bradley Beal, you're not getting the return defensively that you would hope. In fact, you'd be worse defensively. Now, yes, you would have another player that can put the ball on the ground, and Klay Thompson, that's not really his specialty. But you know what I'm saying? All I'm saying is this, and let me conclude this section. I think that this is maybe 4 or 5 years too late as far as Washington's side. I think they should have been, once you saw the ceiling for the John Wall, Bradley Beal team, and once you realize that Bradley Beal is not an A, and that's another thing. The worst thing you can do is build around a player that isn't a championship caliber player. And that's, again, I know this sounds like shots at Bradley Beal. It's not. One thing that you do not want to do, and one thing that can really set your franchise back, is building around a player that's not a championship caliber player. And as good and as great as Bradley Beal is, he is not that. I mean, you see it all the time. Teams, I mean, you talk about you talk about a quarterback-driven league, which I still, we talked about that last episode, but the Minnesota Vikings building around Kirk Cousins, the Giants building around Daniel Jones, Washington building around whoever the hell their quarterback is, Sam Howell. Like that's good. Your ceiling is, your ceiling is however good your best player is, or not best player, but the player that you're building around. So I think that it's 5 years too late, but I am interested to see where Bradley Beal goes. I think Bradley Beal is one of those market or he's one of those people that can change the trajectory of the NBA. Not saying that if he goes on a team, but like he can't. To me, he can't go on like the Houston Rockets and they're automatic playoff. No, he can't go on the Orlando Magic and their automatic playoff team. No, but he could go to the Miami Heat and drastically change their chances of not only making it back to the NBA championship, but winning, or NBA finals, but winning one. Or he can drastically change the fortunes of maybe, say, a team like what's the team I didn't? The Philadelphia 76ers. Maybe they finally get over the hump. You're hearing about the Boston Celtics. Imagine now, you have to give up Jaylen Brown and somebody, but imagine that drastically changes, in my opinion. I think Bradley Beal is better than Jaylen Brown. That changes the way that we look at the Boston Celtics. Now, yes, I think Boston ultimately needs a point guard, but you get Bradley Beal, that's different, So I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see exactly what happens with Bradley Beal, and I think that he has the potential to change the landscape of the league next year, depending on which team he ultimately goes to. Oh, man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.